Hi, it's Nicola Whitehall here, coming to you with my first video, my first public video. I've done some blueprints on private or unlisted, but they're not for the public to see. So my topic today is going to be about a 10-minute video. Is how does God's voice sound? So some stories and tips. So you can ask God something like, what do you want to say to me? And you can speak, or you can think, or best of all, journal, write down, type on a computer what he says back. If you write it down, then you can go back to it and check it and analyze it. And it's going to be flowing thoughts from the Father. So as the Lord speaks to you, or you just speak out what he's saying to you in faith, don't think logically or try and reason, is that God, or that can't be God, or that doesn't sound like God. Don't say that sort of thing. Just believe in faith that he's speaking to you, because he really wants to speak to you, and he will speak to you. So you can discern later when you go back, if something was truly God or if it was your own thoughts. But just while he's speaking, you need to believe in faith. So another tip, you need to be relaxed. You need to believe that God wants to talk to you more than you want to hear from him. You need to persevere in hearing his voice and how he speaks. If it doesn't seem to work for you, you think, I can't do this, just keep persevering, because God will honour your attempts. He'll speak to you, he'll help you, he'll come through for you. He's like testing you to see if you're really serious about learning to hear his voice. Every person is built by God to hear his voice. So how does God's voice sound? God's voice will be loving, kind, patient, caring, encouraging, and will speak the truth in love. All of the fruits of the Spirit are going to be there, and he will sound a lot kinder, a lot nicer, a lot more loving than you do, and you'll see the difference between his voice and yours. If the enemy is speaking to you, it will sound a lot different. It will be the very opposite of God. So it could be some of these things. It could be hateful, accusing, judgmental, harsh, condemning, shaming, guilt producing, could be pressurizing you, could be manipulative. It could make you feel hopeless, useless, or bad. If you feel like that in any way, you're not hearing from God, because he doesn't make people feel like that. And though what I'm saying may sound obvious, many of us, we don't know the heart of God or the character of God, and sometimes when we believe like God is convicting us of a sin, but we're actually feeling shame and guilt and condemnation and like we're the worst scum of the earth, that's when you know that that's the devil talking to you. That's not God talking to you, because he only convicts, he doesn't condemn. So why do we need to hear God's voice for ourselves? You're going to hear stuff from God that's tailor-made for you that you're not going to hear from a prophet. God knows how he wants to speak to you, and he'll speak to you in a special way that is really tailor-made for you. In the coming times, in the future, when there's times of trouble and there's persecution, you're not going to have a prophet on hand unless you've got a prophet who's a best friend and who happens to be right next to you, to tell you what to do. God may need to tell you something to save your life, to save the life of others, to show you what direction he wants you to go in. And if you can't hear him, then that is not good. It's really important. You really do need to hear God for yourself, for direction in your life, for hearing what season it is in your life and the next step he wants you to take. It's really precious thing when you can learn to hear from God and what he's saying to you. So this third part is some of the pitfalls of hearing God's voice. So this is just some things to watch out for, just some things that I've learned. So in some cases, if you hear what you think is the voice of God telling you to do something and do it now, and there is a part of you inside that feels rushed, pushed, pressurized, or forced, like you're being compelled to do something that is not really your choice, then that is more likely the enemy, most likely the enemy, and rather than God. Yes, in some situations, crisis situations, God might tell you suddenly that you need to do this or that right now, but usually in those situations you'd have more of a surety that it's God. You'd just kind of know. But if there's a warning bell that says something's not quite right about this, it doesn't quite add up, then you need to listen to that voice. So basically we learn to hear God's voice by life experience, by practice, and by saying, who is this spirit? So if a spirit or a voice is speaking to you, you need to ask that spirit, are you the Christ who died and rose again on the third day? And if Christ can't answer that it's him, then don't listen. So I've got a couple of stories, just short stories, that just show prophetic pitfalls, just some places where I've fallen down, and I've known God for a long time, but everybody's vulnerable. So recently I heard at a time when I was upset with a person what I believed was discernment from the Lord, and the Lord appeared to show me some negative things about that person. And after about telling me about, for the third time, God said, I want you to obey me and not speak to this person for several days. Let them know so that I can convict them of their wrongdoing. And I was unsure, I was confused, but the voice was insistent, and I wanted to obey God. I wanted to do what God told me to do. However, if I'd got it wrong, then it could cause problems in the friendship with the person. And I wasn't sure 100% about what God was telling me, what I thought God was telling me. I basically felt pushed. The Lord was saying, do this and do it now. But deep in my spirit, there was this calm wisdom type place that was saying, I think I should sleep on it. I think I should see how I feel in the morning after a rest, reevaluate the situation, and see if I still feel the same way, or after a rest I see things differently. But God kept pushing, and I thought I'd better obey. So I sent a message to that person saying, rather rude message, saying that I needed some time to myself away from them for several days, and I did that. I should have known the voice was not God, as it was pushy and caused conflict in my heart and confusion, and I didn't really have peace. I didn't have peace at all in what I was hearing, even though the discernment, so-called discernment, of what the Lord had said about this person seemed to be logical and follow a pattern that made sense to me at the time. The enemy can be very deceptive. The following day I spoke to a different friend, and they were talking about how sometimes Satan talks to us and fools us about why a person is behaving in a certain way, and he lies to us about the reasons they're behaving in that way. So she gave me an example of a customer buying goods at a shop, and the shopkeeper that was serving her was not fully listening to the customer, brushing her off, packed her meat in with the chemicals, and Satan was kind of saying to this customer, look, they don't care about you. Look how rude and disrespectful they're being as they pack your groceries. They're just not taking any care. They're being sloppy, and you should report them. You should report them, get them in trouble. But the actual truth of the situation was that the shopkeeper had a screaming baby that all night and had had next to no sleep. They were doing their best, but they couldn't focus or concentrate on what the customer was saying, and so they made those mistakes in the packing of the bag and various things. So it's like Satan can paint a picture which is totally untrue. So when my friend told me this story about Satan deceiving the customer, I really felt the Lord was showing me that Satan had just done the same thing to me with my other friend, and that it was Satan's voice, not God, that was trying to disrupt the friendship and get me to separate out from this person and tell me a whole lot of lies. So fortunately for me, the situation was recoverable, and the person the enemy lied to me about and that I had believed forgave me for my wrongdoing, and it turned out okay. But sometimes when we hear the enemy's voice and act on it quickly, thinking it is God, like I did, and don't take matters into proper consideration, don't listen for the fruit of the Spirit, and we don't take counsel from others, sometimes the outcome is not good. So my second story is about 18 years ago. I thought I heard God's voice tell me that I had to apologize to a person and say what my sin was against them. And I was very unhappy about doing this. I was distressed, I was crying, but I really wanted to obey God's voice, and so I sent the letter off, feeling uncomfortable, but feeling I was doing what God told me to do. But it was a learning experience, and I realized I should have listened to that knowing in a part of me that told me I really did not want to send that letter. My spirit was saying, no, that's not the right thing to do. And my feeling that it would be a disaster and the lack of peace I had about it. As my spirit had felt the person was angry and rejecting of me, and that was that I just didn't listen to that inner part of me that kind of knew that already in my spirit. So, that voice could have been my own voice, self-condemning me, thinking I had to do the right thing, or it could have been the voice of the enemy trying to create havoc with the people around me. Yes, the Lord can ask us to do hard things, and sometimes that does include apologizing to people. But if it's the real and true voice of God, you will have an inner conviction. But if there's a still, quiet voice or feeling in your spirit that something is not quite right here, deep down something isn't quite right, then you really need to listen to that feeling, despite what any voice is telling you. You need to test the spirit that is speaking to you, so you're not believing that what you're hearing is God when it isn't. So that's some of the pitfalls. I just thought I'd add a little tip at the end. Sometimes when the Lord is speaking to me, and as I was learning to hear his voice several years back, and he still does it sometimes now, is that the Lord will give me a word and a phrase and a paragraph and a sentence that I may have heard before, but I don't know how to spell it, I don't know what it means, so I write the word down to the best of my ability, and and I look and see if it fits the sentence in the paragraph, and when I see that word that I have newly discovered the meaning of fits the paragraph, I know that it truly was God speaking to me, because I didn't know that word. So that's all I have to say today, and I hope you've enjoyed these tips and examples. Signing off. See ya.